I would never bash you in public. I don't even like you half the time, and I would never bash you.
Pouring more petrol onto the fumes, and then not even have the common courtesy to give JK Rowling a phone call, because JK Rowling's like, she's got my number. It's one thing if that's what you want to pretend, that's fine. But if you're expecting me to pretend that you want me to change my version of reality to suit your needs, no, is my answer. No, I'm not going to do that.
It's like if you're butch now, it's like you're trying to be a man. No, butch lesbians have been around since.
Genuine trans people, no issues. Trans ideology, massive issues. That's where I stand. JK Rowling and the Turf Wars. I'm Izzy.
And I'm Garcia.
And welcome to Informally Informed. Okay, so there's been a fair amount of drama in the news, I should say, with regards to several things. Emma Watson, JK Rowling, Keira Knightley got in, I don't know if you saw that clip.
Keira Knightley?
We'll get there. Excuse me.
What did Keira Knightley do?
We'll get that.
Not Pride and Prejudice is Keira Knightley.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so...
Not Love Actually's. Keira Knightley. Okay, that Keira Knightley, get it.
So, basically, Emma Watson was asked in an interview about JK Rowling, and she said that she felt like she still gets to hold on and to cherish the person that she knew. Which... makes sense, but I think Emma Watson, based on what she said previously, is changing her tune now that the tide is not necessarily, that the public opinion has sort of switched, because Emma Watson previously came out. Do you remember when JK Rowling first come out and said that obviously since JK Rowling first out, we've had the Supreme Court ruling that biological sex cannot be changed. When JK Rowling came out and said that biological sex can be changed, Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe both came out and were accusing people of being transphobic and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, JK Rowling responded, because there was a lot of people on the internet where all the great things happen, that were, after Emma Watson came out and made the recent response to a question about JK Rowling, said that, oh well, you know, she's changed her tune and she should be ashamed of herself, and she stabbed in the back the person. This has been ongoing for years. She stabbed in the back the person that gave her fame. Anyway, JK Rowling responded. Would you like me to read it?
Please, because this tea is piping.
I'm seeing quite a bit of comment about this, so I wanted to make a couple of points. I am not owed eternal agreement from any actor who once played a character I created. The idea is as ludicrous to me as checking with the boss I had when I was 21 for what opinions I should hold these days. Emma Watson and her co-stars have every right to embrace gender identity ideology. Such beliefs are legally protected, and I wouldn't want to see any of them threatened with loss of work or violence or death because of them. However, Emma and Dan in particular have both made it clear over the last few years that they think our former professional association gives them a particular right, nay obligation, to critique me and my views in public. Years after they finished acting in Potter, they continued to assume the role of de facto spokespeople for the world I created. When you've known people since they were 10 years old, it's hard to shake a certain protectiveness. Until quite recently, I hadn't managed to throw off the memory of children who needed to be gently coaxed through their dialogue in a big, scary film studio. For the past few years, I've repeatedly declined invitations from journalists to comment on Emma specifically, who most notably on the witch trials of JK Rowling. Ironically, I told the producers that I didn't want her to be hounded as a result of anything I said. The television presenter in the attached clip highlights Emma's all witches speech. And in truth, that was a turning point for me, but it had a postscript that hurt far more than the speech itself. Emma asked somebody to hand on a handwritten note from her to me, which contained the single sentence, "I'm so sorry for what you're going through. She has my phone number." This was back when the death, rape and torture threats against me were at their peak, at a time when my personal security measures had to be tightened considerably, and I was constantly worried for my family's safety. Emma had just publicly poured more petrol on the flames, yet thought a one-line expression of concern from her would reassure me of her fundamental kindness and sympathy.
JK. Woo.
Like other people who've never experienced adult life uncushioned by wealth and fame, Emma has so little experience of real life, she's ignorant of how ignorant she is. She'll never need a homeless shelter. She's never going to be placed on a mixed-sex public hospital ward. I'd be astounded if she'd been in a single high street changing room since childhood. Her public bathroom is single occupancy and comes with a security man standing guard outside the door. Has she had to strip off in a newly mixed-sex changing room at a council-run swimming pool? Is she ever likely to need a state-run rape crisis centre that refuses to guarantee an all-female service? To find herself sharing a prison cell with a male rapist who's identified into the women's prison? I wasn't a multimillionaire at 14. I lived in poverty while writing the book that made Emma famous. I therefore understand from my own life experience what the trashing of women's rights, in which Emma was so enthusiastically participated, means to women and girls without her privileges. The great irony here is that had Emma not decided in her most recent interview to declare that she loves and treasures me, a change of tack I suspect she's adopted because she's noticed full-throated condemnation of me is no longer quite as fashionable as it was, I might never have been this honest. Adults can't expect to cozy up to an activist movement that regularly calls for a friend's assassination, then assert their right to the former friend's love, as though the friend was in fact their mother. Emma is rightly free to disagree with me, and indeed to discuss her feelings about me in public, but I have the same right, and I finally decided to exercise it.
Wow.
I mean, you know what?
Wow.
Where's the lie?
No, I agree. I do agree that all of these former child stars who are only famous due to JK Rowling's work have been trashing her in public, left, right and centre. They didn't have to agree with her. You don't have to agree with people. But if these are supposed to be people that you and I don't agree on a lot of things. There's a fundamental value things that you can't disagree with, I don't think, in a friendship. But we have different opinions on a lot of stuff. I would never bash you in public. I would never bash you in public. I don't even like you half the time, and I would never bash you.
Do you know what? Ivana Lynch has been asked many times by many journalists over the years for her opinion, and she was refused point blank to answer the question. I'm not getting involved.
Luna Lovegood?
Yeah. Keep me out of it. And they push. Well, I understand you just want to be friends with everybody, and I understand you don't want to upset anyone, but you must have an opinion. She still refused to answer the question. Reasonable.
I've not heard Ron Weasley say anything.
No, he hasn't. He's kept out of it because it's like. Anyway, should we move on to Keira Knightley?
We will, but can we just quickly jump back to that real quick? Just because I do agree that Emma Watson. I said this to you before we started filming. The problem with Emma, I've always liked Emma Watson in a sense that I liked Hermione Granger, the character in Harry Potter, because like yourself, obviously same age-ish, grew up with her. She is, Hermione Granger, the character.
Well, she's the movie adaptation. She's not the actual character because Hermione in the books was well better than this weird Mary Sue.
The character is subject to a lot of the fanfic, fanfic stuff. But not Emma Watson. Emma Watson, the person, for me, has always reeked of privilege. And she didn't... Do you know what this reminds me of?
Which is fine.
There's nothing wrong with it. But do you know what it reminds me of? Is her name Greta? Greta Thunberg, yes. I keep calling her Thornberry, like do you remember the
wild
thornberries? Yeah. Anyway, Greta Thunberg. Her and Emma Watson for me in the same vein of things. Just highly opinionated people who've jumped on every bandwagon there is. All right, Greta Thunberg. She's in a different vein of stuff because she's all over the place getting all sorts of. She's at least putting herself out there. Emma Watson hides behind her privilege and then tries to dictate. And
what does that mean? Sorry, hides behind her privilege. Like in what way?
She hides behind. So she was women. Do you remember when she was was it Els or Vogue's Women of the Year? And she came out, and for me, it was a very anti-women speech that she gave.
The All Witches speech.
Yeah, is that the one? Was the All Witches?
I'm here for all witches.
Yeah, damn. I didn't realise it was the same speech. Yeah, for me, it was a very anti-female speech that she gave.
Yeah, well, but what you have to remember as well is that Emma Watson, after she finished filming the Harry Potter movies, she went to America. She studied at Brown's University.
She did.
That's a left-wing university. And she has made, I mean, I'd call it indoctrination, but she has made comments about how, university shapes you, and it's where you get your ideology from, and it's where you learn to really get a grasp of who you are and what you believe and stuff like that. So I think that's probably had a lot to do with it.
I don't, because I think that when you're younger, a lot of universities are I don't think it's a left-wing, right-wing thing, because I think a lot of universities are quite left-wing places anyway, and I mean, there's loads of studies that show as you grow older you become more conservative. So I don't think that it's necessarily, she was at an age, and don't forget the time, the environment, the time, when I say environment, I mean the sign of the times that were happening. There was a lot of change happening in the world. Go on.
I think as well, the fact that she sent JK Rowling and hadn't spoken to her for years, come out, made all these deflammatory comments, knowing that JK Rowling was getting death threats, pouring more petrol onto the fumes, and then not even have the common courtesy to give JK Rowling a phone call, because JK Rowling's like, she's got my number, and thinking a handwritten note without any sort of communication, that is bang out of order. JK Rowling had to massively invest in her security. There was people trying to kill her, literally. You know how crazy people can get?
I do.
Right? You look at the Minneapolis Catholic school shooting in August. You know what? Trans activists get insane, right? So yeah, I think Emma Watson deserves everything that she gets. No. In terms of rhetoric from JK Rowling, let me clarify that.
Yeah, rhetoric from JK Rowling. I think that it's... Do you know what I always find whenever these talks come up? It always turns into a left-wing, right-wing thing. There are a lot of right-wing trans people that also are not really on... It's an interesting thing that I find. So in terms of like Emma Watson and what I was talking about before about the environment, the situation with millennials at the time, it was a very spicy time to be alive. If you recall, the trans debate came to a massive crescendo. There was there were so many things going. Epstein happened during that time.
Yeah, so the trans debate and the turf wars and all what you want to call it, people think it's a right-wing, left-wing issue. It's not. It's a fracturing of the left. You've got two sides of the left, fundamentally. You've got the turfs, the vast majority of which are left-wingers, versus the trans ideologues who are also left-wingers. I mean, the right-wing agrees with the turfs, but it was fundamentally, J.K. Rowling is a left-winger.
She is, however...
If you go to a lot of these events, if you look at all of these mainstream people that are advocating for women's rights on these issues, they're all predominantly left-wing.
I would say this, that I think that it started out that way in the millennial times. Well, I call it the millennial times, which is the times of our lives. But I think that it's like with everything, things move. And I think that it's become a bit more of a less of a left wing, right wing, regardless of fracturing, and more of a Well, it's just the tough. It's men are men, women, as opposed to where you sit in the political spectrum of things. And I think that and then actually now I'm hearing a religious slant on this, which color me surprised. Never once did I ever hear a religious slant on this, but now there are Christian groups that are coming out that are saying, you know, the whole God made you perfect, so therefore who you are is who you are situation. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, Catholic Church, what?
That's news to me. Anyway, let's talk about Keira Knightley, and then we can talk specifically about the trans debate.
Because I want to know what Love Actually's Keira Knightley has done, you know.
So she was, she's playing, the new Harry Potter audiobooks?
No, but I do now.
So they're redoing the Harry Potter audiobooks, but as opposed to what it was originally, which was basically just Stephen Fry reading the books, they're putting sound effects over the top.
And so...
hang on.
Oh, okay.
So they're putting sound effects over the top, and each character's dialogue will be voiced by somebody different.
So who's Anna Karenina's Keira Knightley playing? Yes, I am just going to list off a discography of everything she's been in.
Dolores Umbridge.
No way is Little Women's Keira Knightley playing Dolores Umbridge of all characters.
So she was asked in a recent interview about she was on set wherever they are when they do interviews for upcoming projects. It was something completely different, and she was asked by a journalist. A journalist said to her, so you're playing Dolores Umbridge in the new audio books for Harry Potter? She said yes. And then she said, are you aware that there's that people are calling for a boycott of the audiobooks based on JK Rowling's ongoing campaign against trans people, was how the journalist phrased it. And then...
What did Bend It Like Beckham's Keira Knightley say? What did she say?
She said, I was not aware of that, no. Oh. I'm very sorry. And then she laughed. And then she said, I think we're just living in a time where we've all just got to learn to live with each other, aren't we? And and then she went, hopefully we can all just get along even if we don't share the same opinions. And she came across quite like she was annoyed. It came across as patronising. So all the trans activists are going, she was being patronising. She was laughing. Yes, she did. Well, I think the laugh was like, she was like, I'm very sorry. And then she went, and then laughed. But, like, you know what? Good for Keira Knightley. Why should she have to bend the knee? Like, she, like the ball in Bend It Like Beckham.
You took it right from my head. You knew I was going to say something.
Why should she have to? And, her point of saying we're all going to have to find a way to get along is reasonable. And now Keira Knightley's getting death threats because of the trans lobby.
She's getting death threats? Oh, my God.
Like, anyone that touches his subject, like, you could tell that she was annoyed. That, for God's sake, I wish people would stop asking me about this. Well, I don't know whether people had before. But you could tell she just got, like, nobody's buying this anymore. Gone are the days where Hollywood members have to conform, otherwise they're not going to get jobs. We've gone past peak woke now. And I think people are starting to realise it. And the trans lobby are furious.
I think that it's unfair to bring Pirates of the Caribbean's Keira Knightley into this issue, because Keira Knightley, has been a supporter of... Listen, okay, I know I don't really go on about Keira Knightley, but in case you haven't noticed, I quite like Keira Knightley.
I like Keira Knightley.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace... Keira Knightley. I quite like... She was Queen Amidala's decoy. I quite like her, and she's... I always found her to be quite down to earth. Not that we're friends or anything like that. Based on the fact that she pays herself a living wage, out of all the millions that she's... I can't believe that they're trying to bring more people into this shit, considering that things have, for me, simmered down quite a bit. But also, have they really, or has it just become less so in the public zeitgeist because of the Supreme Court ruling in April?
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the trans debate as it stands and what our thoughts are.
Mm-hmm.
Because, from my perspective, you cannot change your biological sex. That makes perfect logical sense. The term man and woman are set as adult human male, adult human female, in the same way a bull is set as adult bovine male and a stag is set as adult deer male and a doe is an adult female deer. These are terms that are specific. Man and woman doesn't have another meaning just because it's applied to humans as opposed to other species. Like, it makes no logical sense. There is a small subsection of like less than 0.1 of a percentage of people that suffer from gender dysphoria, and the vast majority of children that suffer from gender dysphoria grow out of it through puberty anyway, and it's become a social fad because women's rights, the battle's been won, so they're now looking for other battles to fight maybe. And I think it's really sad because 20 years ago there was nobody was complaining if a transgender woman went into a bathroom. Nobody was complaining because they were genuine people that suffered from gender dysphoria, and then the far left took it too far, as they always do, and now all of a sudden you're getting a pushback on the other side of things. And I think it's really sad for the genuine people who genuinely suffer from gender dysphoria and generally want to change gender, and it's such a minute percentage of the population. I'm talking about the people that do not get sexual kicks out of going into the female toilets. Women don't. Genuine transgender people don't. But it's been co-opted and it's being used now by bad actors, by rapists who want to get into female prison, by people who want to win medals, by all this kind of thing, when it wasn't an issue. It wasn't a thing. And now it's become a social fad where like 25% of, was it Gen Zs or something like that, identify as some form of an alphabet, and there's this whole gender non-binary nonsense and all this kind of stuff.
I think that it's a hard one because we had this conversation briefly when I was saying that it's a big nuanced conversation. I think that the way that it's popularized now, it's not what anyone in history has understood it as. That's not to say, the thing with gender is that it's always excluded a subset of people, the people that were born intersex, for whatever that spectrum of intersex looks like. And then add on to that the social factor of what we call gender, okay? Because there's a difference between what we describe as gender and gender roles. And I think a lot of people confuse the two.
Can I interject quickly?
Sure.
Intersex people are not outside of biological sex. So intersex is obviously like, the umbrella term for and intersex genuinely includes things like micropenis and
no, I'm aware, but some of them are outside of that gender norm. We're talking about biological sex. Yes, but some of them are outside of either male or female. That's the point of intersex.
I'm about to explain.
Go on.
I'm about to explain. So conditions like AIS, CAH, all the things that you would consider to be like part of intersex. Biological sex is based on either small gametes or large gametes, right? Women have large gametes, men have small gametes. There is what all of these intersex people have, either or, the small gametes or there's never been a case where an intersex person has been able to impregnate themselves, right? They do fall into that biological sex. They do have a biological sex. It's just that when they've been in utero, there's been a failure to absorb male hormones or whatever it is, and that has led to a malformation, but they still do have an actual biological sex.
Okay, well, let me finish saying this. All right, fine. You can potato it. That's the official scientific terms for stuff. But there's still a subset of society that have not really felt like they fitted into those male and female rigid boxes of things, all right? Now, that's not to say, I'm not one of these gender is a social construct. Everything's a social construct.
That's not true.
Okay, that's your opinion of what's not true, but I've just listened to you. So that's fine. I'm not one of these people that are so rigid in my thought process that it has to be this or that, or there's a problem with it. I guess my issue is around how far it's been taken. Like you said before, where things are. We're at a point where a very small, minute number of the population in the grand scheme of things have taken things so far that now people have turned away against things that have always been in place or always been around. Like, I've seen a lot of things, anti-gay stuff now. The gays have always been there. The gays have always been there. Even during the time when, well, the gays have always been there. They're in nature and all the rest of it. You don't see it like that in the animal kingdom. Not to say that the animal kingdom is where we should be looking for all of our good knowledge, but I mean, you know, I've seen a cat kill its own baby. But the point is, they've just taken it quite a lot too far, and we're at the point now where people have started pushing back because they don't want the nonsense. We need to get back to a bit more. Do you remember when Biden was coming into power? Not that Biden is anyone's good example of anything, and he said that we needed to get back to a more grown-up way of thinking. I think that this is where we need to. I think we've allowed like the children to take over, essentially. And by the children, I mean that sort of that inability. If we look at how we're saying that they've not developed their brain yet, so they've got an inability to sort of see anything from anyone else's perspective sometimes.
So the under 25s.
Yeah, but I think that the under 25s. I think that it didn't start with Gen Z. I think it's been a millennial thing that's literally just exploded. We wanted to love everyone and bring everyone in and all the rest of it and be, you know, not be our parents. Every generation doesn't want to be their parents' generation. But in doing that, we've eroded the fabric of society. I mean, now we've got high suicide rates. These kids are ending their lives left, right and centre. If people that are coming out as all these letters that a lot of them don't even know what it means, and a lot of these people are not having sexual experiences. There's loads of studies that have been done on this. They're not going out anymore. They're not living their lives. So they even if you were figuring it out, because I remember when I was figuring it out a million years ago, but I remember I was outside figuring it out. I wasn't inside at a computer trying to figure shit out. You know what I mean? I wasn't just being fed information through a screen. I actually went out and experienced the world. And a lot of these people just don't have experiences of the world. And then when they do, they feel like the world owes them something. And I think that's the part that really bothers me in most of this stuff is the world doesn't owe you anything. You are entitled to do whatever you want in your privacy, but you don't have to bring me in. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit more decorum. Sex and sexuality used to be quite a private thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of these fetishes are now being forced. Like, you have to accept everybody's, you know, fetish and kink, whatever. Like, if I'm in conversation,
there's any kink shaming here.
If I'm in conversation with somebody and they're trying to tell me that, if I'm talking with a 6.5 foot bloke with a beard and he's telling me he's a woman, and I'm like, it's one thing if that's what you want to pretend, that's fine, but if you're expecting me to pretend that you want me to change my version of reality to suit your needs, no, is my answer. No, I'm not going to do that. Like, if I thought you to be somebody that had suffered gender dysphoria and you had proven yourself to that point, like some of the friends that I have that are trans, that I look at them and I'm thinking, there's no way that's a bloke, right? And the other thing I want to say is I find this even though technically they are, you know what I mean? You can just tell.
Can I interrupt you real quick, just while you're on that point about the 6 foot odd men trying to be the gender dysphoria stuff? We've eroded the protections that were in place in society to even be diagnosed with gender dysphoria now. We've taken away all the protections that were in place.
Everything's affirmative. You have to affirm everybody's gender ideology regardless of whether or not
that's
true.
But there's loads of gender affirming care that is always been, like breast augmentation is gender affirming care. It's in a different...
It's not really. It's just somebody that wants bigger boobs.
But it can make a woman who's flat on top feel like a woman. It's always been something that was offered under the NHS, but it's had to stop being offered because it was taken up a lot by...
I don't think it should be on the NHS.
It's not now.
Just like I don't think hair transplants. I know both men and women who've had hair transplants.
But I
that's
guess
not.
But the fact is, back then it wasn't so much that it was costing the NHS left, right, and centre. It wasn't like it is now, and it wasn't. It was literally people were when we used to have, because obviously the public knows I work in mental health. We used to have situations where people would end their lives over these things.
So,
but you'd have to go through psychology. You'd have to get diagnosis. You don't do that now.
But this is the problem. A lot of people that claim to have gender dysphoria have a lot of other mental illnesses that go along with that. The attempted suicide rate of somebody that is trans is like 42%. Do you know what it's in Auschwitz? Like 25%. There's other issues going along there. It is not the way that they are being treated in society that's causing this high level of suicide rate. Because you do not expect me to believe that a trans person in 2025 is more oppressed than a Jew in Auschwitz. That's obviously not true.
I would say that things are different. That's hard. No, that's apples and oranges.
I don't think it is.
I think it is.
I think when you look, a lot of these people have other conditions like manic depression and various other bits that lead to higher levels of suicide rate. Right? Even amongst the general population, it's nowhere near that level. Even when you account for the fact that people in today's society are more likely to commit suicide compared to back in the 1930s, that still doesn't explain the massive gap there. There's other problems that need to be addressed that are not being addressed because everyone's just going, oh yes, if you just chop your body parts off, you're gonna feel great. And then when they don't afterwards, it's confusion. They don't know what's wrong with them. But the other point I was going to mention earlier was about, you mentioned a lot of the rise in like homophobia, and I specifically wanted to talk about that in relation with trans ideology.
Did I mention the rise in homophobia?
You said the anti-gay stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
And this is my main issue with this. And again, genuine trans people, no issues. Trans ideology, massive issues. That's where I stand. I find trans ideology very homophobic, and I find it very sexist. And I think it reinforces stereotypical gender roles that women have spent years trying to bash down, right? I was talking to a couple of lesbians.
I was going to say, is this about the butch lesbians? Because I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Hang on. I was talking to a couple of lesbians a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that they're now getting accused of being transphobic by not allowing men with penises to come onto lesbian-only dating apps. Or if they're turning them down, then they're considered transphobic. Gay men have also massively suffered as a result of this. It's like anybody that's it reminds me of Iran, actually. In Iran, homosexuality is punishable by death, but you know what isn't? Transgenderism. So a lot of gay men are changing gender, saying that they're women and being put on stereotypes and stuff being put on steroids and stuff in order to avoid getting executed. And I'm finding a similar thing. Oh, you're not gay. You're not a butch woman. You can't just be a woman because you don't conform to gender's norms. It's because whatever that even means. It's not because you're just a tomboy. It's because you're secretly a trans. No.
Can I jump in on this?
Yeah.
So I was not watching anything because, let's be honest, I think I was reading something and it was talking about where are all the butch lesbians now? And funnily enough, until it was brought to my purview, it never occurred to me. I never see butch lesbians anymore. They're all just, it's like if you're butch now, it's like you're trying to be a man. No, butch lesbians have been around since, I mean, King Arthur's Keira Knightley played a butch lesbian. I don't remember which film it was. Oh no, I'm actually thinking of what's her name? It was, oh god, it's such a good film as well. It's called Boys Don't Cry.
That was about trans people.
It was about, but it wasn't Keira Knightley. It was the other one. She was in $1 Million Baby. Whatever. Anyway, it's about the film's really good. It's about this trans woman in America. Watch the film. But I was looking at that, and I was thinking also of the London Pride event that happened a few years ago. I feel like it was before the pandemic, wherein lesbians basically interrupted the pride and said, this isn't, this is supposed to be for the L, the G, and the B. The T have just attached themselves. I guess what we don't want to do is end up in a situation where it's not recognized, because I do believe in people's rights to do. You should have rights under the law. You're a human being that pays taxes. You should have rights under the law. I just wonder how far we're just going to keep taking it until we can't take it anymore. I know that we're planning to follow this up because we had a conversation about sports, and I do have a lot of separate opinions on that, because I don't think that I think that the trans issue is so big but it's only become so big because every time you try and have a conversation about it, you're automatically branded as some sort of ist. But I think that there are actual conversations that need to be had, and unfortunately the world has created such a hostile environment around it that you can't even talk about it in any way that's intelligible. Because come on, there's a difference between having somebody who's had full surgery, not that we should know anyway, in the women's toilets, and people who are just slinging dick. There's differences here, and I think that there has to be more nuance than that. Third gender's always existed in various cultures around the world, but it's never reached this height where it's you accept me or that's it.
Shall we leave it there, and we'll do a follow-up episode specifically about what our thoughts are with regards to sports, male prisons, bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. And then we can do a deep dive as well into a lot of things like the Tavistock Clinic and all the atrocities that were going on there. Kids giving puberty blockers and stuff to kids. We can have that.
We'll have the conversation around it. But join us in conversation about this. What do you guys think? Because I know that we both have trans friends. I'd be interested to hear your opinions on this. Because I think this is the other thing. When we have these conversations, I don't mean us specifically, rarely do you actually get to speak to a trans person about this.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to know what you all think. Share it, send it to your friends.
And that in itself just goes to show that the number of genuine transgender people is actually really quite small. A lot of the people that identify as, I was talking to somebody that identified as a non-binary, and she was saying, oh, well, I've never really fitted in with the blokes and I've never really fitted in with the girls, therefore it's because I'm non-binary. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just because you're a social outcast.
Also, when we do our follow-up, we'll look into
why are you attaching yourself to. Sorry,
but I will also we'll keep that same energy, because I also want to look at how it is that a lot of trans people actually have a lot of underlying neurodivergence. There's a lot of study around
that's what I said.
Did you say that?
I said we talk about the high suicide rate and how it's linked to a lot of other issues.
Yeah, but you never said specifically the neurospices. I'm talking about the
autism.
Yeah, the autism lot, neurodivergence. Yeah. All right, ciao for now, guys.
We'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of our views. That's the point of the conversation. Join in.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.